just didn't talk about it. Sorry.
All right.
23 hours in a plane.
Okay, so let's talk about these real quick. Maturation. I might not even write them down. I think we've got these. Like, these are pretty cool. Maturation. I know one of you said it. Tell me.
The body's process of emotional, mental, and physical development.
Yes, emotional, mental, and physical development. In general, in psychology, we talk specifically about the physical when we talk about maturation. The other ones we talk about as like development, so cognitive development, emotional development, stuff like that. Motor development. What does that mean?
Moving.
Yeah, it's basically like how your motor skills develop over time. So like obviously we have more coordinated and developed motor skills than a baby does.
Really?
Yeah, most of us.
I would hope so.
If you've ever seen me play a sport, then beg to differ. Neural network growth should pretty much speak for itself, but anyone wanna?
Brain.
Yes. Anything about it?
Nope.
Okay.
The dendrites
Yeah.
are connections between neurons.
Yeah, so those dendrites we talked about with the neurons, they stretch out and they reach out and they develop more when you learn new things. So actually our neural networks are always growing, and if you don't use something for a long time, it might lose that neural connection, which is why it is so important to go over information that you have learned so you can make sure that the neural pathway keeps being used. Okay, and then reflexes, which are just instinctual, like automatic things that you do. No, you don't have to learn them. Rooting. What's that reflex?
It's like being touched on the cheek.
Yeah, if you touch a baby's cheek, he'll turn to it. It's rooting.
Why?
Because they're looking for what they can eat.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you touch, yeah. Suckling. What's the instinct?
You know, like one of like the traits it's kind of like born with to figure out how to like eat food.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're born, like if you put something into a baby's mouth, they're gonna suck on it. That's a suckling reflex. And that is because obviously if you don't know how to do that from birth, you're not gonna survive very long. So it's a good instinct to have. Bubinski reflex. This one you had to actually read about. You can't just guess it.
The big toe.
It is the big toe. If you know, it's really young babies. So if you know like a probably under 6-month-old, you can try this on them. You stroke the bottom of their foot and their foot will like reflex. Their big toe will flex.
Doctor's appointments too.
Yeah, it's because they're testing their neural like connections. And then stepping and dancing. Yeah. No, really, if you hold a baby up, they'll kick because it's like trying to learn how to dance. So that is that reflex. Good. We're gonna do a little like what is this picture thing. So what does this picture show? I'm gonna show you. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them. So what would that be?
Neurons.
Yeah, neural pathways. Good. We're flying through this. That's the goal, though.
That's a baby.
Right. What's the baby? What's the baby doing?
Trying to get its finger.
It is rooting because she's got the. And rooting and suckling usually go together. Like if you were to put the finger in the baby's mouth, they'd suck on it.
You're not wrong.
Okay. The kicking and the dancing reflex. Yeah. You're laughing. Why does Peyton look like that? I forgot you were like this. Okay. And then this one, which shouldn't do as much to you.
Development.
Yeah, do the maturation, because we're talking about the physical. So you can see the physical growth. Okay, I think that's all of them. Oh, wait, no.
Another one. It's the Bubinski.
It's the Bubinski reflex. I'm sorry that you're... I had to do the APSI this summer, which is the AP Summer Institute, which you have to take if you're going to teach an AP course. And one of our, like the people, it was Zoom, so one of the people that was also on there was at home with his newborn. And so like we tested all of the reflexes on the baby. And so like he had to like mess around with the foot and like, it was really cute. But it was cool because we were learning about it and then there was a demo. Yep.
Guinea pig.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about Piaget. That is how you say his name, Piaget. He's cool. If you like take almost any class in education ever, you'll hear about Piaget. He's got a lot. He's got a wide,
Big brain.
yeah, a lot of people listen to him. So here are his core ideas. So we talked about stages versus continuity. So he is the stage side. So this is a stage theory. Children go through distinct stages of ability, and each stage is marked by a fundamental shift in thinking that changes a kid's ability from the stage before. So like, there's a specific thing that like that child can do that would indicate that they have reached the next stage of cognitive development. Stages cannot be accelerated. Kids can't do things they aren't cognitively ready to do. This means like you can't force a kid to be like act like an 8-year-old even though they're only at like the 4-year-old stage. And again, this is a theory. So basically, he believes that like these are stages that can only happen in specific age ranges. So like kids would not be able to advance outside of their age range.
I mean, that kind of makes sense. You can't walk when you're 0.
Right, but he's also talking about cognitive development, not physical. And I'd have to look at my
So how
notes.
true, like how right is it?
We're gonna debate it probably tomorrow. So you will get the chance to decide whether he's right. Yes?
Well, can't they be accelerated because, like, what if, like, this is kind of an extreme situation, but what if, like, their parents, like, either die or, like, they leave, and the older sibling has to take, like, the responsibility, so they have to accelerate past them?
Or like the younger child.
It's an interesting point, and we're gonna talk about Vygotsky, who talks about the influence of social,
Oh, yeah.
like social effects, and so he would have that as a potential explanation. So we'll get there. Basically, he's saying cognitive development comes only after neural development, because he's saying that's basically what he's saying is the age thing. So like, at your neural pathways can only develop so fast, is what he's saying, and so like you can't actually reach those milestones unless your neural pathways have developed enough. Is his theory. Okay. Major milestones mark the shift from one stage to the next. Let me see if I have them written down, because I'm pretty sure I do. So the sensory motor stage, which is birth to age 2, is, I believe, the first stage. And so like the indication that you would be in the next stage, which is the pre-operational stage, is that you recognize that symbols can represent real-world objects. You recognize that like language is talking about things that are actually there, if that makes sense. It's like it's not like a concept, it's a real thing. So you could be like desk, and you can make a connection between those two things. There's a couple other things that go on, but you should have read about them, so like I'll let you make your peace with that. Because there's several like things that denote that they're in the stage. It's just not, they haven't moved on to the next one. The one after that is the concrete operational stage, and this is like when kids develop logic. The biggest indicator of this is conservation. So like if kids can recognize that even though 2 vials are completely different shapes, but they have the same amount of stuff in them, like conservation of mass, then that means that they've moved into the concrete operational stage. So like that was a really like weird way to say that, but basically if I have like 2 vials, these are really bad vials, and they're both like this full, they're the exact same amount of stuff, but then I pour one into one shaped like this, and I pour one into one shaped like this, or something else that's a weird shape, and they look like they're different levels, so like maybe this one looks like this, and this one looks like this, you know that it's the same amount. And if a kid is in the concrete operational stage, they will recognize that you didn't lose anything when doing that. But if they haven't reached that stage yet, then they wouldn't recognize that. Does that make sense? Okay. that's his concrete operational stage. And then the formal operational stage, I believe, is the next one. Yeah, so this is 11 to 15 years. There's also some idea that potentially you could never reach this stage because this is the stage of like abstract thinking, critical thinking, which needs a lot of like support or effort to reach. Like it's a really high level thinking, so some people potentially would never reach this if they didn't have the environment to do so. But like using hypotheticals, stuff like that, that's the formal operational. Does that help with that? Okay, we'll talk about some of his ideas here. So his biggest thing is the schema, which you've probably heard of, but basically it's building blocks about different ideas in the world. You're constantly adjusting your schemas, if you're a critical thinker at least. So like kids will do this. They might have an idea of what a dog is when they're little, and they might be like, 4 legs, furry, right? That might be their schema. And then they see a horse, and we're going to talk about this. They see a horse, and they're like, that's a dog. It's got 4 legs, it's got fur, dog. Like, that's their schema. And so if they're developing correctly, they're going to eventually come to the realization that dogs, like, you need more than just 4 legs and fur to identify that it's a dog and differentiate it from a horse. So they would build onto their schema and be like, I don't know, claws, barks, whatever you would use to describe a dog. And they'd build on their schema for dog, and maybe they'd have a whole different schema for horse then. Does that make sense? It's just basic ideas about the world. So like you guys have schemas for a ton of stuff, right? Like you have schemas for what school is like, and then maybe someday something happens differently, and you're like, oh no, this is what school's like. So you have schemas also. You following? Okay. So how we add new information to existing knowledge. He's got 2 basic things. This is what we're talking about with schemas. Kind of stole it. So there's kids. This is mostly what we're talking about with kids. So there's assimilation and accommodation. I always mix these up, so I'm going to check. Yeah. So assimilation is you're using a schema you already have to deal with the situation, okay? So the kid looking at the horse and saying that's a dog, they're using their existing schema to process information, right? And this is the same thing. Like if you see a cat, they're like, that's a dog, right? 4 legs, fur. They're using what they know about the world and about dogs to process that situation. So that's assimilation. They're using pre-existing information. Accommodation is when they change their schema to accommodate new information. Okay? So accommodation, like the parent is explaining that there's a difference between dogs and cats, and the kid's like, oh, that's a dog, that's a cat. I understand the difference, and they're adjusting their schemas. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, 2 major ideas. I think the rest is about Vygotsky, which we're going to do tomorrow. So I have a couple things I want to do. We don't have a ton of time, so we'll see how far we get. The first thing I want to do is talk about your assignment, which I was going to save for last, but I want to make sure we get to it. So you have an assignment. It was due today, I think. I'm going to change it. Let me change it. There's a link to it on Canvas right here where it says Guardian interviews. And I have some disclaimers to give about that, but just give me a second to change the due date. I never took attendance. I'm just realizing that. Okay, so it's gonna be due on Monday because we have to discuss it on Monday. So I'll set it to Sunday night at midnight so that you guys remember to do it. It would be really great if you could actually do it because we're going to talk about it in class. Gonna take attendance real quick while you guys chill for a minute because I realized I never did. I didn't make it worth, I can't, like I'm still waffling with it, but I'll explain why in a minute.
You should.
You just say yes, so she'll do it.
I would want to do it.
What?
So even how I think,
Mm-hmm.
I got it really content, can I really do it?
Yeah. I think I wrote comments on why too. Yeah.
Where'd you get your necklace?
My parents got it for me. It's glass, blown glass. I think it's from St. Louis. Thanks.
I tried to do a flip grid so you could see my dogs, but
Wasn't
you
working.
know how my flip grid works on my phone.
Yes, I did notice that. That's weird that it works like that.
Oh no, this comic is part of my language. It is so bad. Sometimes I would sit with it open for 15 minutes waiting for it to open a page.
600 tabs open?
No, I literally have one tab open.
Okay. So, Henderson sent out an email to his students to explain this, and I just figured I'd explain it in person. So, this is the email he sent out. It's an interview, but I also want to like recognize the fact that like some of you may not live with the people who raised you from birth to 3rd grade, which is about the time period we're looking at. So I have some alternate options. But basically, if you look at the document, it has some questions about like what you were like as a baby and what like information your parents or whoever you're interviewing have. And then the second half is about parenthood and like anything that they would have experienced on their end of things. So it shouldn't take you very long. Like I think it's like 11 questions. And honestly, it should be like kind of fun. But I recognize that like not all of you have access to people who raised you. So there are a couple ways you can do this. If you currently reside with the people who raised you from birth to approximately middle elementary school, 2nd or 3rd grade, discuss with these people the questions in the document. Okay, so if you reside with the people who you've lived with from 0 to age 8, then just do that, okay? If you do not currently reside with the people who raised you from birth to approximately middle elementary school, so like same age range, but you feel comfortable and are able to make a phone call to these people or contact them in some other way, discuss with those people. So if you don't live with them but you still have access to them, you can talk to them, do so. You can do a phone call. And then if you do not currently reside with the people who raised you from birth to approximately middle elementary school, and your relationship with these people is such that you would not feel comfortable talking to them, or you don't really know who they are or how to contact them anymore, I have some options, okay? So, you can choose a random baby you know about and answer the questions in the first half of the document. Like if you just know some baby, fine. My cousin had a kid when I was in high school. I could have done this with him. Then choose anyone you know who is currently a parent and ask them the questions in the second half of the document. So if you know a baby and you know their parent, great, you can ask them and just interview them about it. If you know no babies, choose a random person who is a parent and ask them about their baby. Okay, so it can be like any parent, their baby does not have to currently be a baby, they just have to have had a baby at some point in time. Okay? Then choose anyone you know who is currently a parent and ask them the questions in the second half of the document. So you can pick a parent and be like, what was your baby like, and what was it like to be a parent? Okay? It doesn't have to be you being the baby. If you don't know any babies or any parents, we'll figure that out. That is a see me situation. I don't think that that's probably ever happened. But that's the deal we got going on here. So the assignment is linked on Canvas. If you could do it before Monday's class, that would be awesome. That's really helpful to me. I'm sure you're busy and your parents are busy, but hopefully the weekend gives you enough time to actually do that. Cool? Fabulous. I did update the Canvas pages on time, so those should be correct. Yeah. And then the last thing we're gonna do, which I hope actually, what are we doing tomorrow? Okay. I didn't read them. I just copy and pasted them. Okay. You guys will need to open this worksheet. We're going to watch the video together. Okay? So the worksheet should look like this.
This is for tomorrow?
We're going to start it today. In class. I'm going to show the video. All you have to do is write stuff down.
Oh.
Should I have printed these?
Yeah.
Okay. I will remember that for the next class. I'll print them.
Wow.
I mean,
We have nothing.
Never mind.
We don't drink that.
Yeah. 57.
well, there's 20 of you in this class, and I have 77 total, so I'm going to assume that
Well, maybe you should just add some more, just in case.
I'm not getting them right now. They're probably not going to print.
No, but like, if somebody wants them tomorrow.
Right, but it's not like I'm getting an extra, like, 7 students between today and tomorrow.
Because you never know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything can happen.
Okay. So what you're gonna do is we're gonna watch these experiments play out. There's just one long video. I don't know how long it is. I don't think it's super long. So we're gonna look at these, and you're gonna write down like experiments that demonstrate these milestones. So really quickly, let's talk about sensory motor and all of these. And then as you go through, if you can write down arguments that support Piaget's theory and arguments that don't support his theory, like any criticisms of it, or if you're like, that seems like it doesn't make sense, write it down. So we're gonna look, and I don't know if they go in order, to be honest with you, but sensory motor, approximately 0 to 2 years. Kids are exploring the world through their senses, sensory, mastering motor control and creating schemas, but don't yet have formal language to communicate. They believe in, it depends. They develop object permanence, which is why sometimes when you play peekaboo with a baby, they don't recognize that you're still there because they don't have object permanence. Like, they legitimately think you have disappeared out of the world. They don't have object permanence, okay? Stranger anxiety, fear of unfamiliar people. If you've ever like babysat and had the parents leave and then the baby just cries for like an hour and a half, stranger anxiety. That has happened to me. It's terrifying. I did it. I was babysitting when I was like 13 for my next door neighbors, and I called my mom because I was like, this baby's been crying for 2 hours. I don't know what to do. I was good with kids. I was really mad about it. Okay, pre-operational, the main idea in this stage is that children are mastering language. They start the stage deeply egotistical, which just means they're really self-absorbed. Some of you can relate. But start to, I'm just kidding. It was right there. It was right there. They start the stage deeply egotistical, but start to recognize that other people have a point of view too. Kids rely on intuitive thinking in this stage, which leaves kids prone to illogical and fantastical thinking. So egocentrism, seeing the world only through the child's own frame of reference, so it's hard to see like how it could affect anyone else. Theory of mind, the ability to understand that other people have their own frame of reference, so they'll develop this. It's the opposite of egocentrism, like being able to be like, oh, Jimmy's having a bad day. Maybe that's why they're sad. Instead of just being like, Jimmy hates me. It's all about me. Okay? Symbolic thinking, that's the ability to use symbols like language to represent ideas. Artificialism, believing everything was created by humans. So like, if you've ever encountered a toddler who's like, my mom made that tree. That's artificialism. Animism, believing that inanimate objects have a soul. I know after Toy Story you all thought your toys were alive. I know you did. What? Maybe you never experienced animism.
I never really played that. I was like, what if they like come to life and they're like scary? I don't know.
Okay.
I had
Um,
a dream.
Because you were
No, I had a dream about a Build-A-Bear that like was following me, and I was so scared of that Build-A-Bear ever since. I literally could not even like look at it.
Oh god, here she goes.
Concrete operational. We talked about the conservation of matter with the like vials and recognizing that just because things change shape doesn't mean they change mass. And then formal operational. This is around 12 and up. Individuals can now think about things in the abstract, even if these things contradict their direct experience of reality. So like, even if you believe that like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, you might recognize that something is wrong with the world even if you aren't experiencing it directly. You know, so like you might be like, oh, climate change is a thing. And then you're like, but there's also like a bunch of snow outside, so that contradicts your immediate perception. Does that make sense? All right, Reese, John?
Does it mean climate change?
What?
Oh, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Never mind. Yeah, it makes
Okay.
sense.
So we'll watch the video, we'll start the video. I don't know if it jumps around or if it goes in order, but we will go ahead. I'm gonna stop the Zoom because otherwise I have to deal with copyright infringement, but the video's on Canvas.